Just give folks a minute to get in here. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another live gameplay of Backdoors and Breaches here. For those of you that haven't seen one of these before, what we're looking to do is get a quick game together, show you a little bit about how you can use Backdoors and Breaches to gamify and make your tabletop exercises a little more fun, interactive, and hopefully educational. Just a little bit of context for you. Our session today, certainly no more than 60 minutes. We'll try and have some good conversation around what we're going to be doing, trying to solve this incident. We have myself, Sean, running as the incident captain here. I've set up a scenario for our two defenders, Jeff and Johnny, to try and solve. When we get into it, I'll give everyone a chance to say a quick hello. But for a little bit of background, we're going to be using the online version today, which you can play for free. Play.backdoorsandbreaches.com. Really great way to set up a game. You can randomize it. You can set up a custom scenario like we did. And I'll also give you a quick view as to how you can go through and choose from some of the different expansion decks that are out there. You can also get physical cards. A lot of the folks, Black Hills specifically, but also some of the folks that have created expansion decks, oftentimes will have physical cards at events. So keep an eye out for them as well. If you have not seen or played Backdoors and Breaches before, what we're going to be doing is trying to solve 4 pieces of a puzzle. We're going to try and figure out, how did the attackers gain that initial access? How'd they get in? How did they pivot throughout the environment or escalate their privileges? How did they either establish command and control or exfiltrate data? And how did they maintain persistence? So to do that, Jeff and Johnny are going to use the detection cards, and we'll bring those up on the screen, to try and find out each of these attacks. The selected attack cards do map back to specific detections. So the idea being, hey, if we choose the correct defensive control that would reveal this attack step, it'll turn that card over. But much like in a real world incident, things don't always go as planned. And that's where that D20 comes into play. Every single turn, they'll choose their detection control. What are we going to look for? For example, we may want to go do a firewall log review. Great. Before we figure out if that's going to work or not, or solve any of those attack cards, they're going to roll that 20-sided die. If they roll a 1 through a 10, that's going to be considered a fail. I, as the incident captain, will have to give them some reason why that didn't work. An 11 through a 20 is going to be considered a success. If they have a successful roll and a detection card that matches up with one of those attack cards, I'll go ahead and turn that card over, right? So they've solved one of those 4 attack cards. All in all, they have 10 turns to try and solve the complete incident. And the last piece to keep in mind is if they roll a 1, a 20, or 3 failures in a row, they're going to go ahead and get an inject. Admittedly, they're almost all bad. There are some good injects. Every once in a while, you get a freebie card turned over. But also, it's a lot of real-world type of injects of when it rains, it pours, and people getting pulled into legal debriefings, things like that. To keep the game moving and fun, a few other things to keep in mind. Once a procedure card is used, we're going to go ahead and exclude that from use for 3 turns. Going to force everyone to kind of think outside the box and how else might we be able to solve this incident. We don't want to just keep relying on a single defensive card there. The last piece, there are 4 defensive procedures that Johnny and Jeff are going to go ahead and get bonus points on their roll. So they'll get an extra 3 points on those established procedures. And the concept there is to really stress the importance of really well tuned tools, documented SOPs, cross training, et cetera, right? Highlighting the difference between a tool that you bought and hope works off the shelf compared to a tool that you really spent time tailoring to your environment, making sure the full team can take advantage of it. So in that case, if they roll an 8, we're going to give them the extra 3 points on those specific cards, bump that up to an 11. That's all of a sudden a successful roll. So with all that being said, really quick introductions before we get going. Jeff, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Thanks, Sean. My name is Jeff Rushton, and I'm a lead incident response consultant at CyberArk, now Palo Alto Networks Unit 42. So, as of today.
Great. Yeah, happy to
Awesome.
have you with us here, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jeff. I'm Johnny Daggett. I'm a staff IT auditor with Wolf and Company. I've been here for about 3 years, and I work mostly with financial institutions and healthcare providers.
Excellent. All right. So with that, before we jump into the game, just a quick overview for folks on how to use play.backdoorsandbreaches.com. When you go there, you're going to see the listing of all the different core decks and expansion decks on here. You can go into each one of these and play in those specific scenarios. Different decks have different areas of focus. We are using the mega deck today. This includes all of the different core and expansion decks. Maybe brings a little bit of mayhem to the game, but hopefully just gives a good overview of what we can do with this game and what you can do back at home with your own organizations. So you can see here we have the 4 attack cards that Jeff and Johnny are trying to solve for, and we have the 4 established procedures or detections defined here. These are the 4 that are going to get that +3 modifier. I will try and remember to click the right button, but certainly feel free to keep me honest. And so with that, I'm going to give you a little bit of background, and we'll just jump into the scenario itself, see if we can solve it. So believe it or not, over the past 48 hours, Jeff and Johnny, your SOC has observed some unusual outbound traffic, largely originating from your engineering team. You do operate a nationwide organization, so this is spanning a few different time zones and obviously locations. There's been some initial triage. You don't have any immediate root cause identification, but it's suspicious enough activity that is occurring across multiple locations. You two have been tasked with performing an investigation to figure out, do we have a real incident on our hands, or is something else going on? I don't know how much folks have been paying attention to the news, but there certainly has been chatter around the office, around the Notepad++ incident over the last week and a half or so, and that kind of maybe gets your gears turning a little bit in your head. Is that something we have to worry about? Is there something similar at play? And with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into the scenario. Where do you guys want to start?
Well, Johnny, I'm immediately hearing that there's an outbound traffic as a particular thing that we're starting with. So that would lead me to believe that a firewall analysis would be great, firewall log analysis. And since that's a modifier for us, it would be beneficial, unless you are seeing it differently, Johnny.
No, I would agree. I'd say either firewall log analysis or that SIM log analysis. So I think it's really whichever one you would think.
And just for folks that may be following along, one of the great benefits of the online version of the game here is you're going to get a little background of what the detective control is. You're going to get some recommended resources to look into. And then with the whole game being set up with education at one of the core principles here, you're going to get links to different resources, everything else. The online version has all of those links as clickable hyperlinks. The physical cards, right, you'd be keying them back in. So another great reason to check out the online version. Firewall log analysis, just so you guys can pull it up, just like you're looking to identify any sort of patterns, unauthorized access, anomalies, etc. And Johnny, you mentioned the SIM, so I'll bring that up again. Looking to aggregate logs across a few different systems, and again, identify anomalous patterns, activity, etc. Both of those do have the modifier for you. Which one do you want to go with first?
I think firewall is good.
Good. Yep.
All right, so I'm going to put the 3 so we don't forget to do that. You do get the modifier. And that is a success, resounding success for you. So that's great. So with that, first successful roll, you pulled a detection card. What we need to do is identify, does that match up against any of the attack cards that we're trying to solve for here? Now, unfortunately for you, while you do have that firewall log analysis capability in-house, you have several folks that are working on deploying a new zero trust style network architecture, and they've unfortunately removed the requirement to VPN into corporate access before deploying the appropriate endpoint software on there. So these endpoints are kind of coming in and out, and the firewall log analysis you do perform, unfortunately, does not bring back any good results for you. So with that, we are unfortunately still at 4 unsolved attack cards for you. Where would you like to go next?
I'm going to agree with Johnny at this point that the SIM is a good next step.
Okay, yeah. We should try that.
Try again with the +3 modifier.
Sean, real quick, while you're doing that, even though we were successful with our roll, how come we weren't successful with finding anything?
Yeah, so with the way the gameplay works, the attack cards. I'm sorry, I should have brought one of these up to show folks. I'll do this in the other game. There are specific defensive and detection controls tagged to each one of these attack cards. So when you're trying to reveal each of these cards, you not only need to have that successful roll on the d20, but you also need to match up with one of the listed detections. That's certainly an area where you can, if you're playing this with your team, you can start to modify gameplay a little bit, and you'll note these detections are not all inclusive. To a certain extent, right, the game needs to be a game, not necessarily real world. So there's obviously much more than 4 ways you could identify compromised single sign-on identity. You can take a look at those if you're talking about in specific context of this is our environment. We know how our controls work. You can certainly give credit for detections where they would fit in. For the sake of this, we're going to be sticking purely to the detections listed on those attack cards.
Got it. Thanks.
Sure. So you have another successful roll here. We're going to start having the 2 of you guys come back because I don't think we've ever had a hot start like this for folks before. And we have the SIM analysis. You're going through, this is one, again, you have that distributed workforce. You were able to get into the SIM. You're seeing some activity for sure. But the downside here is the length of time that you have access to those event logs in the SIM is only going back about a week and a half at this point. Unfortunately, right now, you're going to have someone, look into why did that kind of traffic drop off from getting into the SIM? Maybe why wasn't someone alerted to a bigger issue? And sorry, as I'm trying to come up with a reason why this wouldn't work for you, I am actually going to flip over one card for you. Messed up my notes here a little bit, but we do have one that I'll be able to apply SIM to. And what you're able to find, even though you only had that week and a half or so of activity, is attackers were abusing some hard coded credentials within the environment. It looks like this is how they were at least able to move from that user context to a position of privileged access. Again, remember the initial incident kind of tip off or event tip off you all started researching was tagged from some folks in your engineering department. Here we're seeing some of the virtual machines that engineering team was working in is where those hard coded credentials were. As 2 turns in, you do have 1 card revealed at this point. You have 8 turns left to try and solve the other 3 attack cards.
Okay.
And if there's any of the smaller ones here, I can bring them up without forcing a roll if you're looking to
Sure.
understand what the intent is.
Yeah, I'm just reviewing a few of those. I think at this point, what I'm seeing is that we've looked at the firewall, we've looked at the SIM. It's exposed a few things. In my mind, I could definitely see UEBA being helpful, but if I'm sticking with the plot a little bit, the hard-coded credential is probably not going to be a good way to catch a escalation of privileges through UEBA. So that's one thing that's going through my mind. Also, cloud event log analysis. It's if this is in fact an organization that has most of their estate in the cloud, that would be a really strong contender for a next step.
Yeah,
Johnny, what are
sorry.
your thoughts?
Sorry, say that again for the next step.
Yeah, I was saying that if this cloud, if this, if I'm walking into a customer's environment where they have a large presence in the cloud, then this would be a great next step to investigate sort of what events are
Yep.
happening on the cloud. The other one that comes to mind is EDR, right? So investigating from the client side. Now, knowing that the pattern was through, we know that there's outbound traffic, and we know that there's some challenges with the zero trust implementation, potentially bypassing VPN controls, that I'm
Hmm.
immediately thinking about the endpoint and wanting to look at our EDR as a potential next step for that analysis.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. I think also maybe network threat hunting um, would be kind of beneficial to us. Looking at active traffic for signs of malicious activity. I think um, that could be something to look at. But um, yeah, I think any one of those 3 honestly would be good. Um, maybe with your go with your gut thought that cloud log analysis.
I mean, actually, my gut is to do endpoint analysis, but
Okay,
maybe we can save that cloud analysis for a
for
time
later.
when it makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
endpoint analysis, and just 2 things here. There are 2 very similar but distinct cards. We have endpoint analysis, really is meant to be that end user machine. There is also a server analysis card, same concept but dedicated to servers, just for folks following along and consideration for you guys. Um,
So the way I'm looking at, thank you for scrolling down, that helps. The way I'm looking at this incident right now is wanting to get initial compromise, C2 exfil, and persistence. And in a lot of cases that, I've seen that initial compromise in conjunction with knowing the VPN aspect is probably going to be an endpoint
Yeah.
user workstation, whereas C2 exfil and persistence might be more on the server side.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I like that thought process. Um,
So some of the things you have access to, there is the endpoint analysis, right? Be able to pull up some of those targeted, maybe known questionable endpoints at this point. Can we image those, find any immediate indications? There is also endpoint security protection analysis is, Jeff, to your point, being able to call up on any sort of EDR deployment. Is there some additional insight we can get in from that perspective? Neither one of those have a +3 modifier for you, so it is the pure roll. I don't know if you have a preference where you want to go.
your call, Jeff.
I would say let's go with the EDR card and start there.
All right, endpoint protection and analysis, and that is a success. Which is excellent, even without the modifier. So you pull up some of those questionable engineering endpoints, and you do find out the chatter around the water cooler may not have been just fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You are seeing indications of the same type of traffic that has been coming out around the Notepad++ Chrysalis incident over the last week and a half. And that gives you some insight. One, you maybe want to start raising the alarms internally that we've got some issues. Not only did we find folks had hard coded some credentials, but we've got some valid hits on IOCs coming out of that initial research that it looks like we may have been impacted by this attack. All right, you guys are doing pretty well so far. We're 3 turns in. You've already got half the cards flipped over. What we need to identify now is be able to start answering the questions. Did they establish C2? If so, how did they do it? Did they exfiltrate information? And have they been able to maintain persistence in the environment? Or are we still scope limited to these impacted devices?
I'll let you jump in here, Johnny, if you want to give your initial reaction. I don't want to
Um,
jump.
yeah, I mean, I think we go with the threat hunting. Sorry, I can't see your screen. You said we do not have the C2 and exfil card yet?
Correct.
Right,
Okay.
or the
Yeah,
persistence cards. So
yeah.
we're working towards that. Some of the things that I'm thinking about is the when in the supply chain attack, you know, we might go a different direction with the analysis. You know, purely off of what the scenario is, but thinking about persistence, thinking about C2 and exfil, my my I think network threat hunting or that server analysis is a good both good options.
Okay. Um,
There's also other
yeah,
things
let's.
here. So, for example, Sean, you mentioned something that triggered my thought process around crisis management. What can you explain that card or tap it for me?
Yeah, yeah. So this is one, and it's funny. This one comes up almost every game. Um, Completely valid as part of incident response process overall. I always give this one as a freebie to folks. You're more than happy to say, hey, this is a good use of one of our 10 turns. But it's also fair because some folks maybe don't have as much exposure to the game. This isn't going to reveal any attack card. It is definitely a valid defensive measure at this point, or even earlier. You may have considered, hey, this is a good time to invoke any of our crisis management policies, procedures, etc. When using this internally, I do think it's a good card to bring up and talk to folks. What's our threshold for when we're going to declare an incident? What does that actually mean for us from a process perspective? Does that start a bunch of things in motion in the background that maybe can't be undone once they're done? And understanding, right, the communication and expectations. This is a great one if you're playing with a group that's maybe a mix of technical and business line folks or leadership folks saying, hey, here's the point that we plan to notify you, hey, we're declaring this an incident at this point, right? It's not just an event or something that we're investigating, and confirm that they're okay with that, and understanding what the update process might look like leading up to that. And then once that is declared, this is one of those, from a process procedure perspective, a very important one, but also a freebie I'm going to give you where it might not be the best use of your remaining 7 turns.
Fair enough. Yeah, actually, as we think about this, C2s are going to be most commonly a network related detection. So I'm good with that one that you mentioned, Johnny. The threat hunting.
Network
Yeah,
threat
for
hunting, right? Feed it into something like Rita, Security Onion, see if there's anything that's jumping out as far as really suspicious C2 activity is the great one there. So threat hunting. Firewall is back in play for you guys, just as a reminder. It sat out its 3 turns, and this is a success. All right. So you have been able to identify um, a potential C2 channel here. You went to your network threat hunting platform. We're able to see a lot of valid connections being established through a legitimate but not approved, legitimate meaning a real remote access solution, right? Something like a team viewer, where you all are not using team viewer in the environment. Maybe something else to chase down separately as far as how and why that was able to take place. But based on that triage, once you knew you had some suspicious endpoints, and you had some user identities to chase down, you're able to filter through and flag this activity, where it looks like that is how data may have been exfiltrated through those established remote connections, and also may have been used as part of that C2 channel.
Okay, great. As we're closing in on the persistence here, I'm thinking back to the Notepad++, example. We'll probably want to look very closely at our supply chain. Let's see what options we have for that.
So, as far as your software supply chain,
well, it's an option there. I see software bill of materials analysis, but I don't think that's really going to help us. So
let's see other things that may be relevant. In protocol analysis here, maybe be able to dig into a little bit of what's going on some of those impacted endpoints. You do have that endpoint analysis. Might be able to dig into local event logs, update history. That might give you some insight.
I was thinking, looking into the endpoints, maybe memory analysis, or even that server analysis. I think we were looking at earlier.
yeah.
Yep. So memory analysis, right? Target some of those suspicious endpoints. At this point, look for anything that may be still running in memory. Server analysis is much like endpoint analysis, but we did identify there were some of those engineering servers that were the source of the hard coded credentials. That would be another one. User and entity behavior analytics might be relevant for you. Other items on the endpoint.
Yeah, looking at the way that persistence mechanism can go, most likely will either be server side or, like you had said, memory analysis could reveal. So Johnny, I'm good with either one of those.
You said, sorry, you said server or memory analysis?
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable with both of those directions. probably leaning towards
Okay.
server, but memory
Yeah.
analysis would also make sense.
Yeah, I say we go for the server analysis.
Go server analysis here, see what we can find. Shuffle this one over. Your sim is also back into play for your next turn, as a reminder. And another successful roll. Um, so, server analysis. What you were looking to do is take a look at some of those impacted servers where those hard coded credentials were exposed. You've done a quick look there. Unfortunately, doesn't seem like anything was really done on the server once those credentials were found. There's some initial triage from the engineering endpoints. They found those credentials, and then it appears like the attackers have moved to other machines and haven't done too much with those engineering servers. So, unfortunately, nothing exciting for you to find there.
Okay.
That's all
So
right.
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's the way things roll. The next point in my thought line would be leveraging, some additional scope, right? So thinking about it, okay, it's not going to be necessarily scoped in the server space, so that most likely means it could be persisting on an endpoint. And if we're thinking about endpoint software, that's where the memory analysis could be helpful. But
Hmm.
also, the SIM and the cloud event log analysis could also still have something if we wanted to go that direction as well.
Yeah. And is the SIM, is that one of our established detections?
It's one of yeah, both the
Yes.
cloud event log and the SIM are established for us with a modifier, which makes it
O-
more likely that we would roll well.
Okay. I think
But we also have UEBA and firewall log now back in available play. But with persistence, I'm not sure. I'm thinking about malware or
yeah.
user accounts they have, or you know compromised code, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we might be past UEBA's
Yeah,
relevance here. So, yeah, I think maybe we go SIM. It's an established detection, have a, better opportunity to roll a good roll here, and if that doesn't work, then maybe go back to the endpoint and memory analysis.
sounds good.
All right, we'll shuffle our tiles here a little bit. That is an established procedure for you. And just to be clear, you're going back to the sim now, looking to expand your search. The first time you guys went there, we had the questionable engineering endpoints. Now you're looking to kind of research through the sim based on some of those engineering servers that are now kind of added to your scope of investigation.
Yeah,
Correct. And that is a success. All right. Hmm. So this is one I'm going to give you because I'm running out of excuses for valid findings of things that would work here for the sake of gameplay. So what you found is, the like we had said before, you had some data hiccups in your sim, but luckily enough, this attack was caught within that week and a half time frame I had given you guys up front, and you are able to identify that they were maintaining their persistence through some DLL hijacking. Here's an example where the detection of a SIM is not listed, but the three listed: endpoint security protection analysis, memory, and endpoint. Um, all based on the answers I'd given you leading up till now, likely would have been feeding into uh, the sim. Kind of gave you the first nod away from that on one of them. But overall, I mean, you guys solved that quicker than most folks. We have 4 turns remaining and have all 4 attack cards. Um, before I give you guys just a minute to have any sort of closing thoughts about the scenario, we like doing these about once a quarter, not exactly, but we try and do these a couple times a year, just to remind folks the game is out here, the resources are out here. It's a great way to talk about incidents with folks, get out of the rut of a lot of common tabletop exercises, and be able to have conversations around some of these effective controls that maybe you don't have in place, and you should, because the game shows how well they can help reveal certain attack steps. Or maybe you have some of these, but they're not deployed in your environment in the way that an established detection would here. And that's something to revisit: cross training, better tuning of rule sets, anything like that. Appreciate folks tuning in. Hopefully, gave you something to think about. Johnny, Jeff, any final thoughts before we sign off here?
Yeah, Sean, I think the scenario is well put together. The initial entry point being endpoint related, moving through to kind of like that DLL persistence at the end, which Johnny and I both sort of, we were pretty close to wanting to go towards that memory analysis to find. So it's really good to see that um, the storyline sort of matches the experience that we would have as purple teamers coming into an environment.
Yeah. I was gonna say this is my first time playing, with other people, and I think just talking through it, kind of having those conversations is, a really, really good way to go about using this tool, this game. And it kind of really makes you think about, all the controls that you have in place, and that you could have in place. And I think it's really good at, just fostering those conversations.
Awesome. Jeff, Johnny, thanks again for joining, giving us a fresh voice, so it's not just me talking about the game here. Appreciate it. Folks listening in, hopefully gave you some ideas on how you can use this. And again, play.backdoorsandbreaches.com. Free resource, really great way to learn about some of these attacks, and also some of the detective controls you should be taking a look at. Until next time, thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.